Talkline on Metro News. In a moment, State Senator Mike Hall on where things are on the budget negotiations. Real quick, JR calling in about the blanket sentencing et al. JR, good morning. What's up?
Good morning, Hoppy. I was wondering about if those families have any follow-up, like at the OJ case, where they could bring civil suits against him.
Actually, they already have. The families of all the victims, I believe all the victims, filed wrongful death suits, and they were all settled out of court. Arch, which bought out Massey, settled the suits, and I think several families grouped together. I think there were probably 2 or 3 main different settlements, but all the families of all the victims have settled wrongful death and presumably received some compensation. And I think almost all those were sealed, so I don't know what the amounts were, but they have been settled.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Glad you called. Let's find out where things stand with budget discussions. And you know the background. The legislature adjourned without having a proposed budget, having a budget for next fiscal year, which begins July 1. We learned also that the hole in next year's budget was $92 million more than expected. So now the hole, if you will, the amount of money that West Virginia would be short without some changes in spending or increase of revenue in taxes is about $270 million. Budget conferees have been trying to sort things out. Mike Hall is chair of the Senate Finance Committee. He joins us on Metro News Talkline. Senator, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Where do things stand?
Well, actually, we had a conference call this morning to discuss, the 3 or 4 pieces you have to put in place in order to get this budget passed by, the end of the fiscal year. And those things are, as you would imagine, revenue measures or tax increases, however you want to look at it. The only one that's really seriously be considered is the 45-cent tobacco tax.
Okay.
Then you've got the looking at the different cash accounts in the state, which the governor would have to propose constitutionally. He can do that. The rainy day money, and then finally, you look at a deeper set of cuts in the different areas of the general revenue budget. I've been pointing out in speeches I've been making that the general revenue budget's $4 billion, but the state budget's $12 billion.
Right.
What about the other 8? Well, we don't balance the other 8. We balance those sections that are found as general revenue accounts, which is basically public ed, education, the arts, DHHR, higher ed, things like that.
Because it's federal money. It's federal money, then it's matching money in many cases, so you can't do anything about it.
A lot of our general revenue budget is actually what we call leveraged. I mean, if you have a Medicaid item and you put up $1 and they put up $2.85, we spend about $400 million there. So if you cut $1 there, you're cutting also $2.85.
Yeah, Mike, is there any general agreement yet among the parties, House, Senate, the governor, on, you outlined, again, those familiar areas? Is there any general agreement on what can be agreed upon?
Well, I think the first thing, what's beginning to happen, and the governor, I think maybe even have a copy of it, gave out, scenarios of, the most draconian $270 million cuts without any new revenue at all. And I think as the members of the legislature begin to look at that and find out how that works, and then it's kind of an education process for a lot of folks in this process. Who normally just a budget bill comes to the floor and they vote on it and they look at over how it affects their area or whatever. Now every legislator, if doing their work, has to be deeply involved in a full array of consequences of doing these cuts, and I think that's where we are. We've made some movement in terms of people looking and talking about, well, what can we realistically look at? And I've had meetings with people here and there, that could be directly affected as to ways that we could go a little deeper in the cuts. But I won't tell you that we're all the way home yet. But, we're working on it.
Mike, what you referenced there, and I don't believe the governor distributed this, but I happened to come across a copy because I'm a nosy reporter.
Yes,
and
sir.
The governor has put together 4 or 5 options of hypothetical budget scenarios if the legislature, if there was agreed upon $270 million in cuts. And that's what's been. I'm going to go through them all. I maybe will after the break, after you're off. But for example, one option, which the governor talked about on this show, that if you just cut $270 million, you'd have to cut 805 teaching positions, almost 500 service personnel positions, a 4% cut to public education. That's what that would result in, and then eliminating the promised scholarship. There's another option. Option 3, I think it's called, where if you could cut public education by almost 7%, 6.8%. That would result in about almost 1,400 teachers and 800 service workers losing their jobs, as well as closing down 6 state police detachments. So this goes on, but the point being that if you just want to cut $270 million off the budget, the governor's presented to you all what just those cuts would look like. Is that fair to say? There's some options.
That is fair. That's fair to say, and there's a lot more there. And I guess part of it is to say to the public and to the legislators and so forth that this next round of cuts does not, the last round of about 20% to about 1/4 of the budget you can just cut. You can't cut the school aid formula, for example, without passing a law. When he said that, the 4% basic allowance cut to public ed and 805 teachers being fired, we'd have to pass a law to do that. You just can't do that in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So those things you can get to in the budget, the governor's done those things, and he's cut about 20% of the areas that you can actually cut, that not being one of them, by the way. So he's been digging into about 25% of the budget for 4 years and probably got it down. I mean, people could argue back and forth. I kind of agree with him that in our analysis, if you begin to shove further down, then you do see positions eliminated and certain services people are used to being taken away.
Right. Mike, that's a key point, is that if and when you cut further, and I'm not talking about $5 million, I'm talking about maybe 100, 120, 150, right. 200 million. If you cut deeper, then as the options presented by the governor, there's going to be something's going to happen. Some positions are going to be eliminated, maybe a state police barracks closed, maybe the PEIA not fully funded, maybe the travel and tourism budget is busted. I mean, those kinds of things, correct?
That's correct, and I would say that there are probably 3 different opinions I'm hearing.
Okay.
One is some people say, good, government's too big, it's time to see those pink slips. Then there are others that say, no, these services, themselves provide, it'd be the law of diminishing returns. If we would cut public safety and cut public ed and so forth, those types of things that we've said in the past make our economy grow, that there's a law of diminishing returns and that we've gone too far. And it's somewhere in between. There's a position that says, well, there's still some things that maybe we could look at, and I think there are a few where you could find inefficiencies and find some cuts, but and not go all the way to the heart. So you got those 3 different views, and they haven't all lined up yet. Trust me.
Yeah, Senator, and you said you had a conference call just this morning, and I understand that the House had a conference call last night, and the House was putting forth a plan to make it all in cuts and no tax increases to reach something like $287 million in savings. Did that come out on the conference call this morning?
Wow, you are a good reporter.
Yeah, well, it's a small state, Mike. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, everybody knows. Yeah, it wasn't quite like that. There was some. It wasn't. Their plan does not do all cuts. It reaches after certain amounts of reappropriated cash and so forth. But as we're analyzing that, we're finding that, well, if you cut an agency and then you take away their cash, they may not be able to operate. So what we're doing in the next couple of days in our office is looking and seeing, we've got. Actually, Eric Nelson sent out a letter, and we've got the whole array of 6.5% cuts, what they do to an agency. But we're going to try to kick the tires and call around and see exactly what the implications of all those things are, because it's one thing just to put it on a piece of paper. It's another thing to deal with the agency heads and the human beings and the services and the effect to our citizens and so forth if you do these kinds of things. I mean, what goes? I mean, on one of the lists that the governor gave you, it said health departments cut 44%. Well,
right.
A lot of people access health departments, health right free clinics. I mean, we know about them. So there's a lot more on here than just what.
No, I know. Mike, do you think Do you think that, and again, according to the House plan put forward in these discussions, there'd be no tax increases. Do you think there's any possibility for the House to come on board at some point, the Republican-dominated House to come on board at some point with on the 45-cent increase in the cigarette tax, which would ease a lot of that cutting pressure, or some of it?
Boy, I don't. You know what? Here's what I've been saying about that. I mean, obviously, people in the House of Delegates ran for office in districts where they made commitments about what they would do on taxes. And, so some guys, people over there, guys and gals, may be voting against what they said they would do. But I think some of them are beginning, I think a few, I don't know, are beginning to say that the public is beginning to recognize that we didn't create this problem. The GOP walked in here with a coal industry that collapsed, the nat gas prices down, other revenues are down, and we were the ones told that all this money would be here when it wasn't. And so I think maybe some of them are saying that, perhaps our districts will understand that. So I'm hopeful, yes, that they will, reach a point of being able to go forward with something in that area, or, we've maybe find, I don't know, we do have the rainy day fund, we call it. We're into it pretty far, and you're going to get into it a little further.
Well, Mike, I think that I'm not going to put all this on the House Republicans, but I know they've taken a no tax pledge. But if, in fact, there's going to be deeper cuts, and again, I don't know what those House proposed cuts look like, but those lawmakers then might have to go back to the district and say, I didn't raise any taxes, I didn't raise your cigarette tax. Yeah, and then, but a constituent says, yeah, but why is the health department closed on Friday? Or why did 12 teachers get laid off?
That's the point we're put into, and we're brand new here, and I don't think I've been 22 years here and on finance committee, several of those. There's never been anything like this. And I also say it's not even like the Gaston Caperton era when he came in power and knew that they were about to turn the electric or the gas or something off at the governor's mansion, and they brought in a special session and they raised a bunch of taxes, and the public was real happy about it. Well, we're not at that point, my friends.
Well, I'm not sure the public was that happy. They were happy the bills got paid, but Caperton had to pay for that for a long time. But, Mike, listen. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, well, I'm just saying that, we are moving forward. We're meeting. We're trying to get to the yes. We know the public wants us to get this solved, but we want to get it solved in the right way and do it with the least amount of I want to say least amount of pain, but at the same time there's going to be some. So we're trying to find the best solution and working with the governor's office on it as well.
Senator Mike Hall, Republican Putnam County Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, certainly a respected voice on this discussion. Mike, thanks for coming on.
All right, thank you.
All right.